Yeah. There's a small one on the top.
Gonna give a spoon. One second right there. One second. Slap it out and not get moved in. Oh, yeah. There you go. No. No, I'm good. I'm tired, man. Long day.
All right, who didn't get one of these?
Just let him come take you down.
She looked like a top of the
There's one more. Okay. One more. Well, there might be more.
How many more you need? I'll get one when I get. How many more you need?
Pretty good. You're welcome.
I love the process.
Jackie's trying to make more, so I don't want anyone not to have one before we get started.
Pretty good.
I made a lot of
That's
that.
it.
Some of them are chicken, some of them are meats, some of them are sausage. Wash and all that on them. But they're also, I have a bunch of
Metal
stainless steel steel. Surveillance made some kind of a marinade to brush them. Which I know y'all don't sell them all that.
No, but I like it. I like it better than I had. How? It's about $300.
Yeah. I made 8 of those.
All right, did we miss any more? There you go. Anyone else? Two up here. Two.
I gave mine up.
All right. We ready? All right. Ms. Tomlins? You ready? Welcome to Tyler County Commissioners Court Workshop. This workshop tonight is on the topics and discussion with the Tyler County Appraisal District. Mr. David Luther is going to bring a presentation tonight. We asked that we are going to let him do the presentation and go through tonight. Then after the presentation, the floor will be opened up to public comments. Did everyone get a chance to get their public comments in? All right. We want to take note tonight, Madam Clerk, that we started at 6:10 p.m. All right. If we would, we're going to start with a prayer if no one minds or has any objections. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the opportunity to be able to serve you another day. We just thank you so much for your love, your grace, and your mercy. Father, we thank you for Tyler County and what it means to each and every person that's here tonight, Father. Father, we pray, Lord, that you would bless us, that we would always do your work the way that you would have us to do your work. Bless us tonight as we are meeting, Father, about taxes. And Father, I just pray that we can all be able to look to you in our lives to protect us, and we honor you and we praise you in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, Mr. Luther.
Just about a month ago, I was talking with Jackie and the judge, and we were looking at the preliminary values that came out about that time. And one thing kind of led to another, and we kind of decided maybe we might want to try to do a town hall meeting. Neil, you protected me from one a few years ago. We did it FaceTime, and so this is the first live one I've done. So hopefully we'll get through it just fine. The topic they gave me was how to lower taxes. I don't have an answer for that right off the bat. All I can do is talk about how to protest your value, kinds of things that you can help out yourself on. So I'm gonna try to go through this kind of fast. There's like 90 slides. Some of them we can kind of flip through.
Mr. David.
What I will talk about, can you hear me okay? In the back? What I will talk about is how to prepare a protest and present helpful information. Because that's really what you're here for, is we sent you a greeting card and you got your notice and trying to figure out how to make that right. First thing that we did talk about was this was going to be a meeting initially to talk about the values, the preliminary values. So the first 3 slides in there are spreadsheets. One's for the Tyler County General Fund. The second one is for the Tyler County Special Fund. And the third one is for the Tyler County Hospital District. Just to give you an idea, last year's certified value, taxable value was $1.5 billion. It's been raised to $1.8 billion now. Not all of that was from homes, though. It's mineral activity, oil and gas back on, got over $100 million there that came back. But that chart will kind of tell you by property category where the increases happen and decreases as far as they go. The short picture is that we go out and do our work. We measure houses. We estimate the values on them. We have classification systems, which I'll talk about, and get that part done. We use the deed records to get the ownership changed, and hopefully everybody signs up for their homestead exemptions and so forth. We do all of that part in the first part of the year, and then comes along around April and May, sometime June, trying to get it earlier. We send everybody a notice. We're required to send a notice to anyone that has a value increase more than $1,000 in value, not taxes. So all of those went out. Protest deadline, I think, is coming up 15th.
Yes.
So hopefully this is a very timely meeting. I do want to tell you that even after your questions, and we answer those, we have a live hookup to our office. Anybody wants to talk to an appraiser afterwards and go and work your thing out here while you're here, not have to go back to the office, or if that can be done, we're here to do that for you. I figured I wasn't going to come here and just tell y'all this is what you need to do and then make you have to go to the office. Parking lot's not all that big. So hopefully we'll be able to help in that regard. If you're not happy, then you file a protest. Then the review board will hear the protest. I'll talk about these a little bit more. After the review board gets through their work, I have to certify the values out to each of the entities, the county, the 2 cities, 5 school districts, 2 water districts, and 8 emergency services districts. We have to do all that. And then that starts a process that we call truth taxation. The last 2 years have been very disruptive. We kind of got used to the old system. And then 2 years ago, the legislature made us create a database on our computer where when the tax rates were proposed, you could go to that database and look at your estimated taxes. But it didn't work. It didn't work. Very, very few places in the state really had it working well. So now what they're doing is they're making us update it as the tax rates are being proposed. But not everybody has the work done by August 7th. And that's when you were supposed to go look and see what your estimated taxes were. Legislature has changed that, and this session, so we'll be able to work that database in August and September as they're meeting to adopt the rates. At the bottom, I just say is during this process, the property owners have the second time to attend public hearing and review proposed rates. I probably shouldn't say this, but by the time you get to one of these hearings, everything's almost pretty much done. It's kind of hard to back up. So it's good to talk to your representatives, say this is what's happening to me. Do what you can to cut expenses or whatever. And I say that out of sincerity. I don't mean to do it in a bad way. But if we really want to be effective, that's the way we need to catch it early. I'm not going to go into all of the laws about what we do. I have chosen to use the Constitution, so that's where everything flows from, and it goes a lot quicker than going through all the laws. The very first thing that comes up under Section 1, Article 8, Texas Constitution under taxation revenue, the very first sentence says, taxation shall be equal and uniform. Doesn't say anything about market value. Doesn't say anything about anything else that we do. It says it shall be equal and uniform. That's why a little later, I'm gonna be telling y'all some hints about how to look at other people's properties and compare to yours, because that is very much a valid way to protest. We may not like the extra paperwork, but that's okay. That's our problem. The next sentence says, all real property and tangible personal property in this state, unless exempt, shall be taxed in proportion to its value. Again, it does not say market value, it says value. And then it says, which shall be ascertained as may be provided by law. So the legislature determines what value that's going to be, whether it's market value or some other value. The next one, this is there's a couple of things that are kind of out of order. Since it's the county meeting, the county voters voted years ago, back in the 50s, I think it was, to enact a tax for roads and flood control. It's called, on your bill, it's Howard County Special. But that's what this tax is. It's not 30 cents. That's the maximum it can be. So the Constitution has already capped that at whatever it is. What you may not see is I refer to the FMFC in the corner. That means Farm to Market Flood Control. That's the legal name that I like to use, because tied to that is this $3,000 homestead exemption. So if I don't use the right part of the Constitution, part of the code, then we don't get that $3,000 homestead exemption. And Don East went back a couple of years ago, and verified that for me, that the voters did do this one. So, the next item is that y'all know that we can't raise a home more than 10% a year on a homestead, unless you add on to it or something like that. This is where it's in the Constitution that tells us that we cannot raise it more than 110% of the previous value, unless these other things happen. I have to tell you right now, and I don't understand why, and I'll mention it again at the end. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, when he was doing his talk radio show in Houston, he all the time talked about this needs to be lowered to 5%. And that was just his campaign, everything he did to get elected. But now he's taking an about face. He doesn't think that that's the way to go. He wants to increase the homestead exemption way up. We're talking like $100,000. I think they said 70, but I think everybody's kind of looking at 100 now. But that's where the 10% comes from. It's right out of the Constitution. We voted on that. I don't have the date on there, but we voted on that years ago. Article 8, Section 9 comes back to the other two funds that the county can adopt. Their general fund, permanent improvement fund, road and bridge fund, and jury fund. There's 4 of them that are allowed, are in that 80-cent cap. So they can go up to 80 cents, but never can go above that unless there's special election. And then at the bottom is the 15-cent rate that they can go up to, but it has to be approved by the voters for a special purpose. And we don't have that in Howard County right now. Then as we go through the Constitution, it says all property, whether owned by persons or corporations, shall be assessed for taxation. And some other language. And then at the end, it says all lands and other property not rendered for taxation by the owner thereof shall be assessed at its fair value by the proper officer. How many of you are old enough to remember the old rendition sheets when you paid your taxes? You had to turn it over, statement over, sign a rendition form, declare how many cows you had and all that. Anybody old enough to remember that? That would have been back in the 70s, 60s and 70s, early 70s. They changed all that. So when it says rendered for taxation, what we render is much different than what it was when this was written. Section 15 is just let you know there's a lien on the property for the property tax. That's constitutional. it's there, so we have to pay or lose the property. The next two things are how the appraisal district came about. Prior to 1980, all entities, the school district, water district, the county, they all ran their own tax offices and appraisal offices. So everybody could go one year and protest to the county, and then the next year the school would raise theirs, and you have to run over and do that, and you end up with going to different people. Representative Wayne Peevito proposed legislation and a constitutional amendment to change that, where there would be only one entity in the county that all entities would have to use. So that's how we got created out of this constitutional amendment. It doesn't say it has to be an appraisal district. It has to be an appraisal entity within each county. And that's, let's see, that's for how our office gets set up. Then they set up for the same thing for the Board of Equalization. Every school district, county, everybody had their own boards of equalizations. So you might be going to on the same property to three different boards of equalizations in the same year. They've made that back at the same time, one board in each county. Members of the board may not be elected officials of the county, nor can they be on the governing body of a taxing unit. Legislature shall prescribe by general law the methods, timing, and administrative process for implementing the requirements. And all that's in the law. That's all the procedures, the forms that you get and everything. It's all prescribed by law. This was something that was put in there. One of the things I think that was put in by Bob Bullock when he was comptroller, one of the great things that he did was that there shall be no statewide appraisal of real property for ad valorem tax purposes. So as long as that's in the Constitution, we cannot have a statewide property tax. That's part of what the litigation was about with the school districts. The legislature was suppressing the school district's ability to use a higher rate, and they were also suppressing, or the opposite, coming from the bottom side. So you only had a very narrow window in there. So the school district filed lawsuits saying, you've now created a state property tax because you're setting what it is in this level. So that was some of the school finance litigation. But even though we don't have a state property tax, the next sentence says it shall not preclude formula distribution of tax revenues to political subdivisions of the state. That's the heart of the school finance litigation. That's the heart of why you hear us say and others say that the state's making us reappraise. They really don't tell us that, and I'll explain that. But when you hear those vibes of that, that's where it's coming from, because we do have oversight that comes in and tells us you're not appraising this property high enough in this category and so forth. So that's where that comes from. It's in the Constitution. The next thing is administrative and judicial enforcement, meaning that there are enforcement standards against me if I don't follow the uniform standards, procedures for appraisal of property. And I'll come back to that as well. The other thing, I think Bob Bullock did this too, is that there's never going to be an income tax. And I think I can safely say that because I don't think the voters would ever put it in. It's in the Constitution that the legislature may not enact a state income tax. So some people would say that's a trade-off for the higher property taxes. I'm not sure it all balances out that way. When the savings and loans failed in the late 80s, the appraisers, professional fee appraisers, all across the country came under a lot of heat because they were appraising property enough for people to get a loan. And then those loans defaulted and the savings loans ended up failing. So the Congress created a organization and created this Act, Financial Institution Reform, Recovery, and Enforcement Act of 1989, or FIREA. And it was to bail out all the savings and loans. And y'all know all the history about I don't know, a lot of savings and loans now became city halls and things like that. But what it did was establish a real estate appraiser regulatory system for federal government, states, and the Appraisal Foundation. The legislature has put us under those same exact standards, and I'll share that with you. Look, I went the wrong way. That's okay. Something that we refer to as USPAP is the Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice. There's 10 standards, and 2 of those standards involve what we do. We call it mass appraisal. So we have to follow those, and that's very strictly regulated, I guess you might say. There's some special rules that we have to follow: ethics rule, record keeping rule, competency rule, scope of work rule, jurisdictional exception rule. Jurisdictional exception is the only one that I'll mention, and that is that we don't get to go inside people's homes. We don't get to do the measuring and all that a professional appraiser does. So we have a jurisdictional exception to all of those standards because we don't have to do that. Standards 5 and 6 are the ones that we have to follow. What happened? Well, I just have to follow it up here. There's an organization called International Association of Assessing Officers, which is fancy language for tax officials across the country and in a few other countries. There's some standards that the legislature has put us under that we have to follow. So all the different things we do about computers and professional development, policies, public relations, and things of that sort, we have to follow those. And I'll come back to one of those a little bit later. The Great Divide, what I call the Great Divide, property taxes, everybody agrees that they're too high. Everyone agrees that there be no income tax. I don't know what the answer is. There are people that propose sales tax, consumption tax, and do away with the property tax. Figures won't tell you anything. It depends whether or not you include all property taxes or just school taxes, and so figures are quite. I've been doing this 47 years. Every off year of the legislature, they'll have these blue ribbon committees to talk about property tax relief or property tax reform or appraisal reform. It's always something. And they come out with a really nice, pretty report. And they say, well, we'll file these bills in the legislature. Then they go nowhere. I think that they don't go anywhere because every bill has to have a fiscal note attached to it. What's it going to cost the state and what's it going to cost the local government? Every answer to go to a sales tax is a state tax, which means legislators would have to vote for an increase in the sales tax to do away with the property tax. When that fiscal note comes out, it just goes away. You don't hear any more about it until next campaign time. I've been around long enough to know that. Stakeholders, they gather us together when they propose a bill and computers or whatever it might be. And they'll have chief appraiser, tax assessor collector, county clerk, local governments, county, schools, cities, Texas Education Agency, Comptroller of Public Accounts, Texas A&M Forest Service, Texas Parks and Wildlife, the bondholders, the people that put up the money to do your buildings and so forth. And I left out the legislature. They're big stakeholders. But it seems like that when I've been involved, there's not a whole lot of citizen input. And I suspect it's because if you've ever been to Austin and watched legislation and committees and the way they work, first First of all, people can get notified at 9 o'clock at night if you had a hearing at 8 o'clock in the morning. Most citizens can't do that. But it all happens like that. And I'll have more to say about that at the end. State Comptroller does have oversight of us, where they come in and they'll look at each school district and they'll list a sampling of properties, sales if they have them. Then they'll compare them to our value, and they'll do a study. And they may say that homes less than $50,000, David, you're at 30% of where you ought to be, or 80% of where you ought to be. And they'll break it out in different strata and all like that. That's where we get the vibes, I guess you might say, that the state's telling us what to do. Because if we don't do it, then the state is going to report to the Commissioner of Education for the funding formula a higher value than what we're taxing at. And when they do that, then the school district doesn't get the money. Their local funds are reduced. I don't know if y'all know Billy Reed, who's a school board member from Warren. I had to appear before the Warren School Board my first year here, and they asked me to come up here for the school board, and they said, "Watch out, Billy Reed's going to get you." And he really didn't. He's smart. The question he asked was, "David, does it really matter whether we tax local or not? The state's going to still assign that value no matter what. We reappraise, they're going to do their value. If we don't reappraise, they're going to do their value." And that was the first time that I had really thought of it that way. So he didn't get me too bad. So it worked out. Anyway, they do go through all these ratio studies. We have to do that every 2 years. I think I've already said all that. This is always kind of a back and forth. They'll say, "No, we don't tell you." But if we're not up to the standards, then looks bad. But it is my job to do it. I won't pass it off on the state. It's something I have to do. It's my job to set values at their market and appraise values, depending on whether it's timberland or other real estate land. It's my job to study the market. It's my job to gather sales of sold property. It's my job to do the best that I can gathering sales, but the logical places to get the information will not share it with us. Texas is known as a non-disclosure state, one of just a few states in the country that does not disclose sale prices to the taxing authorities. And maybe that's a good thing. Texas is a very pro-private property right state. I think I'm saying that right. And in a very big way. So I don't know if we'll ever get disclosure. Title companies don't have to help us. The realtors don't have to help us. Multiple listing services won't help us. Lenders don't. Even the comptroller who has the data doesn't help us until after the fact. We've only found a couple of sources. One is the letters that we send out to buyers and sellers of property, which we get some of those back. And TransUnion recently, they have sales of properties throughout the country. For $5,000, we can get the sales that occurred in Tyler County. That's probably 200 or 300 sales. So now we have to balance, weigh the benefit. You know, is it worth $5,000 to get just a few hundred sales? But is it worth $5,000 if the school districts get to $1 million in state aid? So, you know, you ask the question a different way, it makes it sound different. We've done it once. We're on the verge of probably doing it again. But it's designed, their price structure is designed for places like Harris County and Dallas County. There's so much a parcel, but there's a minimum $5,000 fee. And I think ours figured out like $25 for each sale. And I've talked to a couple of realtors. I said, "Why don't you let us pay you $25 and you'll just give us the sale?" That didn't work either. In the end, it all circles back back to the taxpayer. The comptroller's office, that's just one thing they do every 2 years. In the off year, they do what's called a MAP, a Methods and Assistance Program Review. And they come in and they'll do a performance audit, if you will. They want to know, are you doing your budget right? Are you getting your notices out on time? All these different, about 80 something questions, I think, isn't it? And it's really strange. We make 100 on it, nearly every time. But we're doing all the right things, but yet we're not getting the values. They're saying we're not getting the values. Something just don't add up with all of it. But they do this every other year, and as long as we can provide them what they ask for, then we get great scores. You probably have never seen me advertise it. I don't think I've ever put anything in the paper about it. I just don't know if it's really worth. I don't think it's anything people want to hear to begin with. I put this in there. I'm not sure people just know the basics of how we calculate a tax. I'm going to step out. I would bet 95% of you probably cannot look at your tax bill and calculate it to make value turn into dollars. I just don't think the information's there. And if you have two different kinds of property on the same bill, it makes it even worse. So I don't know what taxpayers are supposed to do. I mean, how do you know you're paying the right amount? The arithmetic happens right. But anyway, the way we do it is the taxable value. It means after all exemptions. If it was $95,500, you divide it by 100, and it comes out to $955. Then you would take that number and multiply it times the rate that the entity adopts. The entities always adopt a rate at $1 or some amount per $100 valuation. That's why we do the divide by 100. So then if you take the $955 multiplied times the rate, it comes out to $1,098.25. So you protested the value, you came in and you got the value lowered to $86,800, and you want to know, well, how much did that really help? Then you could take the same formula, take 86,800 divided by 100, 868 times $1.15, comes out to $998.20 or $100 less. So your efforts got you $100. Or let's say you went to the board and got it even lower, and that calculation would be $152. I just pulled these out of the air, so it's just trying to show how it works. I do not have an illustration in your packet about the tax freeze. How many of you have frozen taxes, homesteads? Last year, we voted on 2 amendments to the Constitution. One was to raise the homestead exemption from $25,000 to $40,000. That passed. But there's another measure that people just didn't understand, but it was going to give the over 65 people some additional relief. Nobody really understood it. But it was not to take effect until the 2023 taxes were done. So we're coming into that period. We have to wait for one piece of information from Texas Education Agency before we can do it. That is supposed to come out in August. Preliminary calculations that I've done trying to project what TEA may come out with seem like it may save about a third. So if your taxes are frozen at $300, they're now going to be frozen at $200. We're going to go down, pick up the frozen tax and reduce it. Even though the exemptions don't get you that relief. The legislature, they were very embarrassed because it started in 2019. And when they passed that bill, they didn't take care of the over 65 people. They had in every other time that they had done that. And it took them 5 years to get to it. So anyway, we're going to be giving that. So those of you that are over 65 that are paying some amount, you're going to get a reduction. I just can't tell you what it's going to be. And that gets kind of complicated on how we go about doing the calculations. Anybody wants to do that, we can, I can show you. After the meeting, we can do that. I put this in here for Mr. Hughes' benefit. Apparently Polk County gives a 20, they had not been given a 20% homestead exemption all these years. And so the attorney did some resolutions for them, and for Angelina County, the same thing. So they thought that maybe we need to do it here. And they sent me an email, and I said, no, I think we've got all that done many years ago. And Donnie Smith Gregory gave me the resolution when it was done way back in the 80s. So what I did find is on our website, it doesn't say 20%. It just had an asterisk next to the entity, but it didn't say why. It didn't say what the entity was. So I now have added in the third column the 20% with a minimum of $5,000. So if anybody were to look at our website, they may have thought we were not giving it. But I now update. We need to update that, Kelly. I just redid that. But that's the exemptions that everybody gives. If you have any questions about any of them, you can let me know afterwards. This is that $3,000 that the Constitution gives, and that one special tax. We've got it accounted for in there. Then there's all kinds of exemptions. I read you the Constitution said all real and tangible personal property in the state shall be taxed. And then there's that little part that said it unless exempt by law. Well, these are all the different kinds of exemptions. I just put them in there so you would know. The thing to remember about exemptions is if you're an organization, a church, or whatever, under property tax law, both the owner and the property has to be used for charitable purposes. IRS law is not that way. You can be a charitable organization, but you can own property, but it doesn't have to be used. You just be holding it. Well, property tax is not that way. It has to be used and owned by a charitable organization. And that's pretty much true on all of these. I just said that. Kind of go through this kind of fast. Y'all probably know pretty much how we go about getting our work done. We'll pick an area, we'll go out and reappraise it. We're driving around and see that somebody's building a house, we'll make a note of it, make sure we get out there. It's important that we get all the factors done. What all this talks about is what if we drive up and there's a locked gate? Well, we're not going to cross the gate. We're going to go back to office. We're going to send you a letter saying we need to reappraise your property. Can we get access to it? If you say no, we have other means to be able to do that. And then there's other things like that. Somebody maybe just come in and tell us, well, I don't want you on my property. We don't have to have it posted. We won't go on the property. Our attorney said nowadays it's not worth the risk. We do some things from the car. If we're going by land and all we're doing is just verifying that there's no improvements or just checking it, then we'll do that. We do more of that. You used to hear about windshield appraisals all the time. This is a much different thing because Greg helps us get our work routed to where you can just go down the road and do the properties without going and driving here. Kind of got that down pretty good. The kind of data that we need, and this is kind of getting into where y'all can help us. We need to know the construction type, whether it's a basic square box or rectangle, or whether it has a lot of cuts and turns in the roof line. The more and more that is, the more expensive that, that property is gonna cost to build. We need to know whether it's wood or metal, exterior, what kind of exterior it has on it, and all of these kinds of factors could go into the appraisal of the property. And I'll come back to those, but it's important that we get the features. If nobody's home and there's not a posted sign, we will go knock on the door. If no one answers, we'll leave a card or a hanging, what do we call that? Door hanger. To make sure that people know that we were there. Same thing, if it's a renter and we know it's a rent house, we still want just going to the property without letting them know what's going on. New construction, I kind of already talked about that. You know, different ways of finding out whether or not somebody's built a new house. Mortgage request, wanting to get the taxes so they pay the taxes for the mortgage. We don't have it on, then we need to run out and get it. Building permits, mechanics, material moving things in the record, deed record. Deeds of trust where people have borrowed money and so forth. So it's different ways to do that. Sales verification, we can't just take a sale and input it and say it's what we're supposed to use. Probably the best example is that if somebody buys a house for $100,000 and we just don't see it, we just don't understand why it's that high. We might call that property owner and say, did you buy anything else with this property? And some people will buy a tractor, $10,000 tractor or something like that. And we get to deduct that out of the sale price if we can confirm and find out if those are situations. Even if we don't, if you get a letter, even if we don't call you and ask you, and you know that that's in there, be sure and let us know. Because we can do that. Sometimes there's trades of property, there's all kinds of things that happen that might make the sale not just right. We're supposed to look at every property once every 3 to 6 years. There's a statute that says every 3 years. There's a international standard that says every 6 years. So the state has taken on that we can do it anywhere between 3 and 6 years. Reinspection is pretty self-explanatory. Driving review. I do want to get to this one. We do a lot of work from aerial photography now. There's a product called aerial oblique imagery, and what that is the plane has a camera that points straight down. It also has 4 other cameras that point north, south, east, and west. So as it takes pictures, it's taking all these pictures. And when we finally get the product, we can look at the property on top. We can look at it from an east angle, west angle, or so we can tell whether if there's a building there we know we don't have, then we can kind of look to the side and say, but it's just a shed. It's not a house. It doesn't have but anyway, it's not used to actually measure with, but it's very, very good to be able to use. We get those every 3 years. There's a product that company will superimpose the new photography over the old photography, and they can tell us any new structures or any ones that are not there anymore. And send those accounts out to us. We'll know which ones to go out and look at. Our most recent thing that we did was a sketch product. They superimposed their photography over our existing sketches and gave us a printout of those that didn't jive just right. So so it's a really neat product. We share costs out with Council of Governments Council Goins has to have it for 911 addressing. So we split the cost with them. So it turns out to be a pretty good deal for us. We do all of our timber typing, hardwood, pasture, all the agricultural things with that as well. I've already said all that. How properties are valued. I'll kind of go through this kind of quick. There's the sales approach where we look at other sales. There's the cost approach where we estimate the cost of a new structure and then depreciate it based on its current condition. Or we can use the income approach, which is mostly used for motels and shopping centers and things like that. But if someone's renting a house and they've got the income information to share with us, we can do a calculation to do that. And then the last one's mass appraisal, which is what we do, which is kind of a smorgasbord of all of that together. I'm going to come back to the sales. The cost approach. Right now, the reason that you got your appraisal notices is we updated our cost schedules that we use. There's a company called Marshall and Swift Valuation Service that is used by all the professional appraisers throughout the country. And it gives costs for different components of the houses. Now, it's also adjusted for each area. So they do market adjustments on that. This last time, whenever I did my estimated cost, I went to the book and I looked at every one of them, and I was within $1 and $2 a square foot on every category. It really made me feel good. However, if we do that, then we really have to take a serious look at depreciation. And I can't emphasize it. If you come in and talk to us and you know something's wrong with your property, the house is unleveled, the doors won't shut. I mean, just anything you think that would take away from the value of the property if you try to sell it, be sure and let us know that, because we're having to be very flexible on that. Because if we're up right at the cost, that's the top. We've got to be able to depreciate it based on age, condition, and all the different things. That's my schedule that I came up with. Income approach I won't get into. Y'all understand mass appraisal. We don't get to go inside houses now, so we have to do a approach. Trying to get back to depreciation. A basic definition of depreciation is a loss in value due to any cause. Some of those causes we need to know about and be able to do that. Depreciation comes in 3 different forms. One is physical depreciation, so it's worn out. Along the way, it needs to be a new roof put on it, or rotten boards, or whatever. Those things are called physical depreciation. Functional obsolescence is if you have a 350-gallon water heater in a 1,200 square foot house. That's called a super adequacy. I mean, you're not going to get your money back out of that. It's not going to happen. The other side of that, the inadequacy, would be a 20-gallon water heater in a 3,000 square foot house. It's just not there enough. So those kinds of things, if they're there, especially if they're not curable, we get to take value off for that kind of thing. External is one we used to hear a lot about. Probably didn't do a whole lot about it, but if you live next to a scrapyard, a junkyard, they're banging metal all the time, crack house down the street. Again, anything external to the property that would affect the value of it. So if you try to sell it, you're going to have to disclose what you know about crime in the area or whatever it may be. So it's real important that we take a look at that. Now, it doesn't extend as far as to say, I don't like the school district come in. It doesn't cover that. It's going to be real close to the property itself. Something else you need to know is if I have a 75-year-old house and I was going to put an 80% depreciation on it, assuming nothing had ever been done to the house for 75 years. But most properties get updated. In fact, I think I got an example in here. House may be 75 years old, roof has been replaced 4 times, originally had attic fans, and later window air conditioning, now has new ductwork and central air and heat. All these things have happened. So no longer will we call that a 75-year-old house. We're gonna bring it current, not new, but we're gonna say maybe 30 years or 40 years. And so you don't get near as much depreciation because you put money back into the place. So effective age is a very important thing for us. Now I'll stop right here and say, what we do is not a science. It's a judgment. It's an opinion. So nobody's right. So make your arguments and tell us things, and then we'll see if we agree. But it's important that you exercise pressure. I'll say it. That, hey, Dave, you can do another 10%. You can do another 5%, or something like that. It's not negotiations, but it's knowing what we're up against this year with these increased costs. It's just something I've just been more akin to know that to understand that we're not perfect. That's some of the things that you could tell us about: rotten boards, unlevel house, cracked slab, junkyard, sinkhole, leaking roof, doors won't shut, neighbors won't shut, original wiring, substandard today. Brian Babin called me this morning. I don't know why I'm thinking of it right now. The guy that killed the 5 people in Cleveland, Texas, the neighbor, there is a huge development that some guy's putting in for all of the people coming in from other countries, and they're housing them there, and they're doing it for next to nothing. He told me today they just bought another 35,000 acres down there. Going to expand it some more. But, I don't know why I thought of that, because it's I guess I said neighbors. I don't know why. Property next door sold for half a mile. You got the wrong measurements. Garage, it's just a lean-to. It's not a real garage, and all of those things. Things that won't work is the DA didn't prosecute somebody that hurt me or hurt one of my kids. My kids are grown, so I shouldn't have to pay school tax. The city won't fix the dip in the street. I didn't vote for the bond issue, so you raise my taxes. Write me a check and I'll sell you my place today. I can't help it if these Neanderthals come in here and pay $7,500 per acre next to me. My property has been in my family now 3 generations. Those are real examples. They're emotional. They're real. And I don't know what's going to happen. That's why the property tax has got to have some adjustment. I don't know what it is. But people have been here all their life, have property right next to where somebody paid $7,500, $2,000, $10,000 an acre. And if it wasn't for the over 65 exemption, if they're over 65, they would probably have to sell out. And in my old days, I would say, well, yeah, you can sell and get that money. In this market, where do you go buy? There's no place to go. Everything's high. I'm on a fixed income, can't afford any more government, just do away with the appraisal district, pay more sales tax instead. Everyone would share the burden. Then what happened to all the lottery money? We still get those. That was supposed to educate these kids that can't make change at the store. These are real quotes. These are real things. When Wayne Pivotal got the Pivotal bill passed in 1979, and we came into existence, the way they set it up was supposed to eliminate politics into the appraisal process. So one day I was looking at what does politics mean, and I've got several examples, but the one that I came up with was who gets what, when, where, how, and why. It all kind of relates back to that. I will honestly tell you that the county or the schools have never told me I need to reappraise. They've never threatened to hold money back or anything like that. I honestly feel good about that. I have pretty good standards. And I know when budgets are tough and all that, but I just won't do it for that reason. It's not right. I've been doing this for nearly 50 years. Property tax been around since the Constitution was signed in 1876. I've seen the property tax under that old system. It needed reforming. The reform it got, and it's worked well for over 40 years. But in 1980, this was the law book that I operated under. Today, it's over 1,000 pages of 8.5 by 11 paper. I wonder sometime when you take a system that was fair, perceived as fair, and you milk it and change it, that at some point it's not what it was started out to be. I can't answer that question. The public will have to do that. Little emotional thing I put in. My dad was in World War II. He always talked about children, grandchildren not have to live in a mess. And I'm closing with a couple of things. We have the governor, lieutenant governor, and the speaker of the House. Legislation just ended. The legislative session just ended, 140 days. They went into the session with property tax. It's the number one, property tax relief. It's the number one thing they were going to take care of. Filed the bills right off the bat. Senate had one idea. House had another idea. The governor was just pushing it. And session ended. They didn't even have a conference committee. They didn't even come together. Session ended. And the day it ended, 9 o'clock at night, Governor Abbott called a special session. The House and the Senate both passed the same bills they had. The House adjourned sine die, which means it's over with. The governor has to call another special session to get them back. I don't know why 3 men can't get together and work something out. I just, they're all in the same party. That doesn't make sense. But what they argued over is this appraisal cap of 5% is what the House wanted, but not the Senate. And the Senate wanted the $70,000 homestead exemption, and early on, the House did not want that. House came back and offered $100,000 homestead exemption, and it wasn't even given time of day. More important thing is to buy down the MCR rate. MCR rate is the maximum compression rate. So for 5 years now, the state has made the school districts lower their tax rate a little bit each year, and they make up the difference to that. They're wanting to buy that down even more, which is a good thing. They got $15 billion to do it. They don't have to even go out try to sell anybody that they don't have the money. I mean, the things are all there. I don't know why it's not already done. So my closing was kind of like, Town of Sam Hilton legislators all campaign for property tax relief. Beat your breast for all the relief thus far. Go to Austin for 140 plus days. Put property tax relief at the top of their list with $15 billion already in the bank, ready to help. Appraisal skyrocketing all over the state, and they are, and not get it done. They make me do my job. 3 men are holding every property owner at the cliff's edge. There needs to be an Abraham moment, so that people don't get sacrificed. So that's what I'll close with. Any comments y'all have?
Yeah, put that screen back, please. I'll take a screenshot of that, if you don't mind.
Oops, wrong way.
Last one. Perfect.
That one?
Yep.
So I'll entertain
All right.
questions or whatever.
You-
I don't know if
does
that's
the
what y'all
court
came
have
to
any
hear,
questions?
but let me tell you this. We have computer hookups to our office. After the meeting, anybody wants to talk to us, so they don't have to go to the office later. We'll stay as long as we need to work with you and see if there's anything to do. I promised the commissioners we would try to do something like that. I didn't want people to come here and then have to leave and feel like they didn't get talked to or anything at all. Thank you, Judge.
But before we do that, is anyone in the court have any questions?
I may hear in a little bit, but I'd
Okay.
rather them be able.
All right, we're gonna start with our public comments. Mr. Neil Alder. Wow. Do you have a timer? We're gonna have to, yeah, we're gonna have to do 3 minutes on each person.
How about give me 4? Give me 4. Give me 5.
Well, we'll do 5. We'll do 5.
I want to first say that David Luther, you are not the enemy. You were doing your job. The problem that we had, and here's the way most people feel, is that all of a sudden, I'm talking over here because a lot of folks are looking over here. This is not your problem. This is a problem that happened long before you. You were asked to correct it, but for many years, nothing happened with the rooftop appraisals. And all of a sudden, no new revenue is on the horizon, and we got to do something, and we got to figure this out. And I've heard the saying, well, we got to do something, or the state's going to come down on us. Well, that's not really true, because when we had the big appraisal increases, 4 years ago? Heck, Woodville was on state values for 2 years. They were. We got those. Why? Because we were afraid we were going to get left behind. That's the bottom line. Let's be honest. And that's no one's fault in here. No one's getting blamed in here. That's what happened many, many years ago. When I bought my home in 2016 in Warren, after I left Comonville, because I was afraid someone's going to abduct my wife again, I bought a $350,000 home, and it was appraised at $150,000. And I asked a guy, I said, you got to be kidding me. Well, thank goodness it's that, right? I'm like, okay, well, we knew something was up, didn't we? I guess the real question happens when you have to make that correction and there is no correction in the taxes. Because we can talk about the Constitution and we can talk about the Texas Constitution, but you know what's more important to me than that? The Declaration of Independence, and I'll tell you why. Declaration of Independence tells me that I have a God-given right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That can't happen if you can take my property just because you decide my property value goes up 300% in 2 years. That's why you've got such a pushback. That's why the people are so upset. And I hear and guys, I'm going to tell you something. I am not the person that's going to get upset by you raising my property evaluation from $4,000 to $8,000 over the next 8 years. I'm not the guy. I'll tell you who the person is. The person that has worked their ass off, their butt off for 50 years of their life, and they build their home, and they live 5 miles from me, and they get a loan, and their bank says they can afford it because they're retired and they're on a fixed income. And just because you're not on Social Security doesn't mean you're on a fixed income, by the way, ladies and gentlemen.
Right.
Social Security is not your income. They have worked their rear ends off to make sure they can afford their dream home.
Amen.
They build it. And guess what happens? Now, they look at it and go, man, in 8 years, I can't afford what I decided I was going to live in. Is that fair? No, it's not. That's why people are pissed off. That's why people are upset all over this country. Because it's not about the Texas Constitution. Certainly, you and I have had this conversation.
Right.
This isn't about the U.S. Constitution. This is about what we should be able to have. If I have a piece of property, I shouldn't have to worry about that getting taken away because my kids or their kids or my great-grandkids shouldn't be able to afford it because of taxation, tax creep. That's why people are upset. And I will say this, and I've said this 100 times. Change is never going to start at the steps of the White House, sir. I'll tell you where change is going to start. It's going to start at the county courthouse. And you guys can do that. I'm telling you. Make a change. Go, well, what do we do? You know what? I will tell you this. I don't think in a million years our founding fathers ever thought that we would have an appraisal district that would sit there and tell me, well, Mr. Alderman, you borrowed $300,000 on your home. It's got to be worth that. I have no idea in my mind that you've ever told me that. I agree with you, sir. My time is definitely up. But I'm telling you, we can make those changes right here.
Thank you, Mr. Alderman.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Bob Boykin.
I yield my time to Neil Alderman.
Well, shoot. So,
Should have done that a little bit earlier, Mr. Boykin.
Yeah.
here's what I would do. This gentleman and I had a comment, and I did not know that was happening in a million years. But I'm going to tell you something. That guy right there, myself and David had a conversation about this a long time ago. And I will tell you, David and I had a conversation, and he told me, and I hope you don't mind me saying this, you basically said, I have no idea where this is going. Because at some point in time, people are not going to be able to afford their property. They're not. So if they're not, what's going to happen? We keep kicking the can, because here's what's happening. You call, I got mine went from 162 to 300. I called him, goes, guys, what's going on? Well, you need to talk to the state about that. They're coming down on us. I didn't just talk to them. I went there. You know what they said? You have nothing to do with that. Woodville's been on state values for 2 years. So I talked to my commissioner. My commissioner goes, we don't raise your taxes. It's kicking the can down the road.
Right.
Everybody gets to. So you know what? If you do away with your Tyler County Appraisal District, I hate to say this, do away with it. Forget it. Put the can where it belongs. Let your state legislator talk. I heard we're talking about Nichols, Babin, your representative. Put it on. Let them talk about it once a year, or twice, or at least once every 2 years, right? But no one's doing it. They just keep kicking the can down the road, and that's why you feel the way you do. Everyone does. No one ever wants to talk about the real issue, and the real issue is this. Everyone gets plausible deniability. We didn't raise your taxes. Your appraisals went up. Your appraisal district, we didn't raise your taxes. Talk to your commissioner. Talk to your school district. Bottom line is this. If your home was worth $100,000 2 years ago and now it's worth $200,000, your taxes double. They double. In 8 years, they'll be double. And you don't know who to talk to because everybody else is kicking the can down the road. Someone's got to be accountable. No one ever is. By the way, present company excluded. No one is complaining at you guys. That's just the system that we have. And if that system wasn't there, maybe we would get some taxation without representation. Does that sound familiar to anybody?
With representation.
Excuse me, you're right. Taxation with representation. Excuse me, I'm sorry, getting fired up. Attorney Lockwood, Mayor Lockwood.
I'm here for you.
By the way, thank you for.
All right. read the handwriting. Is it Greg Foster?
Gary?
Oh, well, I couldn't read your, yes, handwriting there.
I own 6 properties over in Spur right now that due to these taxation, I'm gonna get rid of tomorrow. I got the property, it was $70,000. This is 2 years later, you've now got me at over $95,000. The property's divided into 4 different farm fields. And I just don't get where the taxation is coming from. The house that's on the property is sitting on cement blocks. It's not even on a foundation. So it's more of a storage shed than it is a house. So I don't get why it went up over $20,000 in 2 years. It just don't make any sense. I live in a place right now in Wasilla, Alaska. Some of you might have heard of it. We had a VP from there. I bought the place for $150,000. I retired. The whole property was paid off. The borough up there has now got my property appraised at a little over $550,000. My property taxes every month run me about $600 a month to pay for my taxes. So I feel like I rent my home from the borough. Please don't put your people in that condition.
And the property's paid off.
The property is totally 100% paid off.
Have you been in? I didn't hear you at the very beginning. Have you been into our office? Talked to us yet?
No, I have not yet. I understand that you've got some people
Yes.
here tonight
We do.
where we can mark some of that stuff down because
Yeah.
it really needs to get done on that property. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. All right. The next one, Miss Elizabeth Grammer.
My questions were already answered.
Okay, all right. Sir, did you?
Yes,
Okay. But I'm going through alphabetical order here through
okay,
the different ones here. Did you fill out a comment thing?
I did not.
Okay. All right, okay. We'll let you fill one out here.
I'll give you my time.
You gonna give him your time? There you go. All right.
You may not want to.
There you go. All right.
My
You got a
name's
timer
Mike
set?
Godwin, and
Could you give us your name?
my name is Mike Godwin, and my wife and I manage timberland.
Okay.
And land. We work in 13 or 14 different counties, all of them here in East Texas. And I really don't have time to sit around and count acres and stuff because we're too busy working, but we manage approximately 50,000 acres. So I deal with a bunch of appraisal districts, and some of them are horses behinds. Some of them are just fine as frog hair to work with. I've seen my landowners get hammered, and I've seen them come out smelling like a rose at the same time. But one thing is, we bought a little log house on 5 acres, you know, for, for whatever reason, call me stupid. I wanted a log house. Well, I got one. And, we bought it in January '09. So we've been there 14 years. The value has doubled. And one thing that's so confusing, and like I say, we probably worked for how many, 35 different landowners. So I look at a bunch of them, you know, and there's some things that I have a hard time understanding because you look at your statement and it says market value, $250,000. And I'm thinking, come on, y'all. So I'm working my way on down the line. Well, then it gets over here to appraised value. And I like that. It's pretty much in line. My question is, what's the big deal about even having the market value on there?
What I'm scared of is I've warned people for the last, say, 10 years, don't let the government get their foot in the door. They started out assault weapons. Well, then you got a bunch of fools that don't know what an assault weapon is. Next thing you know, my Remington Model 742 is now an assault weapon. I guess the next thing, my Model 700 is going to be an assault weapon. Don't let them get their foot in the door. And it's kind of the same way with this, with this $250,000 market value. Now, I'll be the first to say we're not in Houston, nor Dallas, but we manage some land for Trammell Crow, biggest real estate outfit there is. I don't know why they picked me to work for them even, but years ago, the man that I answered to calls me up and he says, Mike, we're going to sell this, this, and this. I said, okay, what do you need me to do? He gave me a little list, and so I went out, did what he asked me, and I called him up, said I got it done, and I said, do you mind if I ask you why you're selling them? Because we got some good timber coming on, and it looks like $1 million. And he said, yeah, and Bullard Independent School District thinks it does too. Bullard Independent School District was killing them. So they sold those 4 tracts and took the money and bought land in another school district. So I know how the system works, but
If they were being taxed on the appraisal, on the agricultural timber value, it shouldn't have been much different.
sir, Trammell Crow has people that their only job is to figure out how not to pay taxes on something. The only thing they don't have is somebody that tries to figure out how to not pay me. They know better than that.
This is being recorded.
They got people. They got people on the payroll that their only job in the world is to make sure that they pay as little in taxes as is humanly possible. So you tell me how they do it. But they fixed it. They sold that land and bought land in.
Talk to me after the meeting.
Yeah.
Talk to me after the meeting.
Sure.
Get with him after the meeting.
Thank y'all
Thank you very
much.
much. Mr. Is it William Hall? I'm reading your handwriting. All right.
Neil, are you finished with your comments? I'll yield to you. If you have any more, you got the floor.
I did. I'm not sure what I did to deserve that. I want to first of all thank the county mayor for correcting me on an egregious error with what I said a minute ago about taxation. So thank you again. I want to reiterate, I guess, to the folks that are here. I think you have to remember when people are talking about their appraisal values, I think everybody in this room wants to make sure that their property values are what they are. And let's all be honest. If we want to sell our property, we want to make sure we get the most out of it, right? What I think everybody's upset about is the fact that, 2 or 3 years ago, they were 150 and now they're 300. And that means the property taxes have officially doubled. If anybody doesn't understand the math, that's, 150 to 300 is double. And that's what everybody's upset about. And they look around and they think, what are we getting for that? Now, granted, you don't get all, I don't want anybody in this room to think that the county gets all that money all at one time. They don't. It's progression, right? And then there's some folks that, they're capped at what they pay, and it's a little slower than you might think. But I think for the most part, what people are upset about is the fact that they don't see anything for it. Which even the guys over here, I think everybody will agree. If you were in the same boat as everybody else, would agree. They want to see something for it. They want to see some sort of progression. I had a conversation, I hope the mayor doesn't mind. I had a conversation with the mayor of Woodville not too terribly long ago about how in the world we are going to figure out a way to grow this place, right? Growth is incredibly important. You cannot sit here and tell me that growth isn't important. If it's not, then inflation is going to outpace you, and you will eventually be taxed out of your property. And that's what I was trying to talk about a minute ago. I do not ever want to see my property going, I don't know, going before the courthouse square because somebody in my family can't eventually afford to pay for it if I give it to them. Does that make sense? None whatsoever. We got to get a handle on that. We do. And I'm not exactly sure what the answer is, but I will promise everybody in here, the answer is not, he's not the enemy. All he did was fix what did not happen in this county for many, many years. You did not have rooftops being evaluated what they should have been for many years. However, your general fund, your road and bridge, whatever you want to call it, all of those things were being adjusted accordingly to what was being brought in. Then all of a sudden, no new revenue. Whoa, it's on the horizon. We got to fix it. Now let's get everything in line. And now guess what? Now, yeah, you're looking at it going, well, heck, guess what just happened to my taxes? They're skyrocketing, and they're going to. From the time I bought my home to the time in another 8 years, my taxes will have doubled. And in case no one is talked about this, in the 10 surrounding counties, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, I think we probably have the highest taxes per capita. Am I not wrong? I'm exactly correct. Of the 10 surrounding counties, and I will tell you, we have the least amount of industry, least amount of business, and if you think that's going to change, you're wrong. Because inflation is going to outpace our growth. And if it outpaces our growth, then guess what happens? You're going to do this, and you're going to try to tax your way into making a living, and you will force everyone out. And that's what's going to happen here. And guys, I got news for you. You got two interstates that are going to collide, and they are going to bypass everything here if you don't figure out a way to fix it. Now, sorry, hold on.
Mr. Bertrand Jeton?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
I would say what Neely was saying. I just I was searching every student I lost my job. The enterprise thing. It had nothing to do with data county. But it came to a point where COVID disturbed my business a lot. We put people in LA in close proximity. So I struggled. My property went so high in the estimate, it was not real. And what I feared was came to a point where I could not afford my own house. And lately, I put it for sale. What was estimate? I had offer on the house at $60,000 less than what was estimated. And finally, I refinanced my house and well, kind of survived. But it's really scary. I paid this house for 16 years, and I come to a point where I don't know, in between mortgage and all that, I really contemplate to get a trailer and to get to a property of a friend in another county, because I didn't know what to do and how to live in this house. So Neil, you got the point. Yeah, that's right. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Mr. Kevin, is it? All right.
I just want to maybe clarify or get clarified something that maybe would be beneficial for all of us, because I heard you in the very beginning stated something to the effect that the Constitution says that you couldn't raise this more than 10% or either 110%
On the homestead.
On a homestead. Okay. Well, I do have a homestead, and maybe we need to get together after this because, and I'm going by the market value, okay?
Right.
And I'm blessed. I'm not arguing that point, but it was last year, $470,239, And this year, the same 2023 is $711,632. That to me doesn't figure no 10%.
What was the
But
appraised,
I might be
what's the
misunderstanding
appraised value line say?
the appraisal value.
That's where the 10% is gonna kick in.
Okay, well, I see that, but still, that would be more in line with 10%, 355 to 366, but still, 711.
Yeah, same thing as Neil was talking about.
Yeah, it's outrageously crazy. Let me see if my mother, and I'm not gonna go through all these with you, but, and I, by the way, have been to the tax office, to the last 3 years to dispute my taxes. Before that, I didn't have to dispute anything for 20 years plus.
Tax office or our
Or
office? Our office.
your office to file just like we did this year. My wife filed the, what you call it, to dispute your taxes. And, you also mentioned something too that struck me, and it's true. You said it was a best judgment. It wasn't a rule or a law, it's a best judgment.
What I mean is, it's someone's opinion of what they think the
Opinion,
property's worth.
yes, opinion.
So, and my opinion might be different than your
Right.
opinion.
So my question is, I guess, is as long as we're not being silly about it or outrageously, for lack of a better word, stupid, why is not our opinion just as good as yours and somewhere meet in the middle would be fair?
I'm not sure that we're doing that, are we?
I'm just asking because I've disputed 3 times and I did leave last time rather upset, but like I told them, I said, y'all know I'm gonna pay it. It's my moral obligation to pay it. And I have to do that, but
Like I said, this year is very concerning for me because the depreciation aspect of it.
Yeah.
And that might bring it back down. We can look at it.
My 40-year-old was my mother's house. They're gone. So now my mother-in-law is living in it, but it was $68,937 last year. And it's $81,076 this year. Before that, it was in the 50s maybe. So I'll yield my time to anybody that would like to have it. Thank you. Thank you.
Now, one thing I forgot to
Go ahead.
address, I completely let it get by. I think I told you at the beginning about everything being equal and uniform, and that there's a second type of protest that you can do by comparing to other properties. So you can look at some other properties, but what we usually find, somebody will come in and say, well, that one's 75% of my house, and we got the same house. But then we start looking at the records, we find out, well, there's a big difference in square foot, or there's an extra barn or garage or something like that. When we do that kind of appeal, and we can help with it, we have to make sure that we're making adjustments to try to bring it back to like your house. Just like a professional appraiser does whenever they do a formal fee appraisal. They'll have a subject property and they'll have 3 to 5 sales. And then they will adjust those sales by taking into account the number of square feet, how many acres, and adjust those. Then at that point, we look at the totals and see whether or not that would hold up or not. It's complicated, but it's getting more and more popular in protest around the state. They're harder to deal with, but to help somebody, it's worth it. But yeah, I forgot to address that.
Mr. P. Carl Mute.
I respond to a wide variety of mispronunciations.
Okay, all right, there you go.
Okay, to start off with, you'll be pleased to know that I've lived here 7 years and have never felt the need to protest any of your valuations on my properties. One of your slides about what the legislature was talking about was going to limit it to 5% increase as opposed to the 10% it is now. most of y'all may not realize that 10% a year doubles your taxes every 7 years. People that might look at, say, well, inflation's over 5%, maybe that's not a good idea, needs to remember doubling it every 7 years. Other than that, Neil, since we've talked about the development, if you want the rest of my time, you're welcome to.
Oh, no, thank you, sir. I appreciate that. I
Thank you.
set it up.
All right. Miss Melissa Riley.
You had talked about how the Texas Constitution is what rules you, right? What tells you what to do. And this kind of goes about what Bill was talking about. Who's kicking the can down the road? Because we are responsible for the people we put in office, but yet we're not holding them to what they need to be held to. So a lot of this probably falls back on us, that we're not holding the people responsible for that. And with that being said, I think our county government should also step up and go beat on doors. Make legislature talk to you. That's what we elected y'all to do, is to protect us, to protect our property, protect our values. Y'all need to, I think that y'all need to step up, go to Austin, beat on those doors, tell them this is what we think y'all are doing to our county, and we don't appreciate it. I mean, if it takes us to go and knock on doors, I guess we'll make a trip one day. If y'all want to come, you're more than welcome to come with us. That's the only thing I know to do. But on this right here, it also says the Texas legislature does not set the amount of your local taxes. Your property tax burden is decided by your local elected officials, and all inquiries concerning your taxes should be directed to those officials.
That wording is verbatim right out of the law. They make us put that on there like that. Yes.
So, everybody's sitting here. Taxes went down the weekend. Just saying. So who's driving the ship?
Well,
Where does it end? Who is going to take a hold of the helm and say, enough's enough, and let's steer in a different direction?
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Did your taxes go up last year?
Oh, yes.
They did? Well, and I'm just gonna say this, I had a lot of people very good friends that were very, very upset about taxes last year. And that the rate that was actually adopted was less than the rate from the year before.
No.
Yes.
No, stop that. This is the time for public comment, because I'm gonna tell you something. guys.
That's the truth.
We didn't go, no, it's not. No,
Well, let
Yes,
me
it is.
finish.
Hey,
Just let me
hey, hey,
finish.
You don't have the floor.
It's,
You know
let the
what?
turn.
It's public comment time, y'all had your chance. Judge, your chance.
Hey, I got the paperwork right here, Neil, if you want to see it. Come look at it. Come check it out.
Just calm down. I was not
Go ahead.
trying to cause an argument, but
Let Ms. Riley finish her comment.
Everybody, y'all's values have gone up, everybody's had. But now I think it's the time that we need to stand up. Go beat on doors. Get a committee together to go and knock on doors. It doesn't hurt, all they can tell you is no. They can't eat you.
And-
So,
Thank you.
I mean, I'm just,
yeah, I agree. I mean, it's like several people have
because I
said
mean,
here,
if we
it's
can't hold the
a
people
national
up there who
problem.
are setting these laws accountable, then,
Quit mumbling, Neil.
I
Come
mean.
on up here and look at it.
I'll come up there.
Hey,
Stop.
Stop.
sir,
We don't push back, they're gonna eat our life.
Melissa, go ahead and finish
Go
your
ahead and
comments. I want you to
I
finish.
was just saying, that I think that's where we need to go. That's where we need to go. We can sit here and debate and debate and debate, talk and talk and talk.
I agree.
Until somebody actually steps up and goes, enough is enough, let's go and get this started. Maybe, like he said, it's gonna take this little county to start it, and all of a sudden the next county steps in, and the next county steps in, and all of a sudden, all the little counties in Texas have representation up there beating on doors, and we make the national news. I mean, that's what they're doing.
Mr. Luther,
I told you about the committee process, the way the legislature works and all that. And then those off years, they have those interim committees and people will come. And I've been to a lot of those. Everyone I've been to, there have been a handful of counties going through this that would show up, express their opinion. Legislators would go to Austin and say, well, that was just a handful of counties. The next year, it'd be a different group of counties. And the next year would be another different group of counties. There's never no
Well, that's what I'm saying.
pulling it all
Talk to
together.
Other counties, and you don't just go up there as Tyler County, go up there as Southeast Texas.
And Melissa, I will say, the mayor can attest to this, but we've, like even Ivanhoe, we've gotten mayors together and we have been going up there and, mainly on economic development.
Yes.
So
Well,
far.
That's good, but maybe we need to get other counties involved. Like you said,
Yeah.
go
Well,
up there.
I-
Made that promise to us, and they
I'd like to say, Ms. Riley, I did go several times this year to Austin, and I made it known as far as taxes, economic development, different things for Tyler County. And I have stood along with other commissioners and other representatives in Tyler County. We have stood there and we have been beating on the doors. And I did every bit of that I could on there. And I guarantee you, I'm going to continue to do the same though.
Maybe go get all the
Yeah.
county judges together and say, we're gonna go up there as a group this
Yeah.
time, and we're gonna make a show.
I know I've spoke with other county judges, since, and that's something.
And I will say, Mayor can attest to this, that we have had a good amount of unity between the cities and the counties too, and going to those places where over the years it hadn't happened, but now we are. Well, we are, and we are gonna beat down the
One thing
door.
that could be helpful is use your appraisal district as a resource to gather information.
Okay.
Don't just say
Go up
there's a
there
problem,
empty-handed.
but help us prove it. No, there's a problem.
And I would call your state representatives. That needs to happen.
Well, let me move to the next person, Mr. Robert W. Orman. Okay.
Okay. I'll be the first to admit, I don't know jack about the property tax system. Don't know anything about it. Basically, what I've learned tonight is what I know. And no offense, your slides were too small to read, and from a distance, they were hard to read, and your paper's hard to read. But some of the things I picked up tonight, a previous person said that based on the property value appraisal, that value cannot go up more than 10%. Okay, so when I got my property tax form this year, now my house is brand new. I built it during the COVID virus ordeal. The cost of lumber was sky freaking high, along with all the other materials. The cost of those materials are dropping. Cost of lumber is back down to what it was in 2019. Yet my market value went up about 25% from what it was last year, being brand new and freshly appraised last year. And I think, and I don't know how government works, but it seems like to me the problem with the property tax system is the market value evaluation. And so if you've got people that are coming in from Austin, where property tax is sky high, had a friend, his father died, they lived in a 1,200 square foot house. That house was selling for over $400,000. They looked up other property in the neighborhoods, POCs, in other words, rotten floors, same price evaluation. So you get an individual from either out of state or other high price cities, Austin, Houston, whatever, and they come here and this is paradise. I mean, this place is paradise, gentlemen. I worked hard. I did 9 years in the Navy submarines, in the nuclear field. I worked at a nuclear power plant. I worked some years when I worked overtime when I was healthy. I worked over 3,000 hours in a year. I tried to save. We raised 3 kids. And I built my wife. We picked this place because it reminded her of home. And we built our dream home here. And like Mr. Almond said, if nothing changes, I'm 7 years older than my wife. If I die, my worry is that this place will tax her to where she can't stay there. And that scares the crap out of me because I won't be here. And the one thing that I think to me makes sense is on the market evaluation, the same rule and law that y'all have that says that the actual appraised value cannot go up more than 10% a year should apply to a market evaluation. Or should say, you bought your house for $150,000, now the market value is $300,000. The appraised value should apply for taxes, and the individual that comes in who has that kind of money wants to pay $400,000 for a piece of property, even though it's really only worth a portion of that, then they pay the high taxes because that's what they paid for it. And anyway, to me, it seems like you have to have moral fortitude and you have to do what's right. In the nuclear field, I worked at the nuclear power plant down in Mount Gorda, and your word is your bond. And if you don't, at least in the nuclear field, submarines, people die. In the nuclear field, you have an accident and you trash an area. And so, gentlemen, I don't know how to go about doing it. I mean, if you need legs, once I get healed, if you want me to go door to door, I'll damn well do it. But I'll go to Austin and knock on doors. But the taxation of houses based on market value is wrong, in my opinion. In my opinion, it's wrong. It's not fair. It's not moral. Yeah. Anyway, that's all I got to say.
And I do want to, Mr. Overman is our veteran service driver. So not only was he a veteran, he drives senior veterans. Well, not right now because he had knee surgery, but he carries them. So I want to give you a hand. Appreciate it.
Miss Stacy Walker. All right.
Okay, I've heard lots tonight about residential property values. What about the commercial side of it? Is that here too? Is that, okay.
Sure.
Well, my thing is I own both, commercial and residential. My commercial value on my appraised value of my commercial property has not gone up as fast as my residential home has gone up. Now, I've looked at properties, commercial properties here. We have, and I don't know how it works, but we have multi-million-dollar companies that are just paying property taxes on the land. So where's their structures? Yeah. Where's their structures? For example, Parker's has been here for how long? Compare the appraisal value of our Parker's to the Parker's in Jasper. There's a $500,000 difference. Ours is less. So a lot of the monies, why aren't these commercial properties paying what they should pay? And under tax abatement, I don't know how it's supposed to work. It's only supposed to be like, no, according to what I've learned on Google for the state of Texas, it's not supposed to exceed 10 years. Somebody needs to do some research. A property.
We're in the 10th year of the pellet mill. That's the only abatement we have.
Okay, what about the other thing down on that road by the Boy Scout camp?
Never was turned on.
Never turned on.
They gave up their abatement.
Yeah, they gave up their abatement.
Okay, so what about that structure that's standing there? In the time frame that they have owned that piece of property, their property value on that land has not increased at all. I own an acre of commercial property and my property has increased. Same thing with pellet mill. Another thing is The Halliburton building was sold, I'm assuming, from Halliburton to New Energy. There was a structure on that piece of property. It disappeared off their appraisal. It's gone. Building's still there.
Who was it?
It went from Halliburton to New Energy. I think it was New Energy. You'd have to double check it.
It's above the pellet mill, right?
Right, by the pellet mill, yes, sir. I understand they had some damage, but if that's the case, if there's a way to make a building disappear off a piece of commercial property so I don't have to pay taxes on it, y'all need to tell me how to do it. Because I'm not a millionaire. I never made millions of dollars having a business in this county. But there are million-dollar companies in this county that are literally the land for the, whatever it was that never got turned on, that's categorized as vacant. And in the last 12 years, that property value on that acreage has not changed. Same thing with pellet mill. I mean, I don't think it's fair. We have Parker's appraised at less than $300,000, and you have Tyco over $1 million. So where is the justification in that? I do not think it's fair that I own a home that was built in the 1950s, and because it's around the corner from rental properties that are owned by different individuals, my property is appraised at over $50,000, and these rental properties are all appraised under $25,000, and they've been updated. And this is stuff that I drive by and see, and then there are properties that have never changed. I look and I get, you said you phone calls, you leave, we make an appointment to come back to your house if you're not available to speak to us. No, it doesn't happen. Because I've gotten phone calls because they couldn't have access to my property because my gate is closed. We need your gate code. No, but I will be more than happy to let you in my property, because if it will lower my appraisal value because my house has not been updated or anything. But if I can change my residential property into a commercial property in Tyler County, I need to do that. Because commercial properties in this county are so underappraised. When I opened my business and bought that building from Mr. Henry English, I asked him about it because I was from Houston. Commercial property through the roof. Your taxes are going to be higher. Your commercial property is going to be higher. And I know my time's up. Let's just say a residential home went up about $20,000. A commercial property went down too.
Thank you very much.
So something's backwards, guys.
Thank you. All right, well, that's all the public comments we have tonight. Mr. Luther, you said you are going to stay and answer questions?
Well, I got a question.
Okay.
Based off of what she said on this commercial property, are there exemptions that play into this to where they're not taxed? Based off of what she said, the commercial properties, are there exemptions that like the E-Tech plant has that why they're not being?
No, are you talking about the electric?
The electric
Yeah, the power plant.
The market value of those, they're for sale all over the country, $5 million. Oh, land I have to look at.
I don't look at market value because that fluctuates, and if the market crashes tomorrow, your house isn't worth that. I look at appraised values, and I looked at them across here, and I went to Jasper County, I looked at other counties and compared properties that we had here as opposed to them, and we're about the same size as far as the county goes. And there's just too much variance. I mean, everybody's harping on residential. Like I say, my residential keeps going up and up and up every year. My commercial property, I mean, I shouldn't pay less on my commercial property than I pay on a house on a quarter-acre lot on Neely Street.
And
Something we need to
another
look
question I had, thank you
I
for
don't think
reminding
there's any
me, but I had it
special
written down.
exemptions. If that's right, then that's something we need to look at.
On the market, market value or appraised value, are we being compared within county on those values? Or is it outside, like Houston and,
When it goes to commercial property, sometimes you have to go outside the county.
but as far as
For the most
residential.
part, it's internal.
So
Yeah. One kind of dilemma you have is commercial properties don't sell as much as home properties. So you don't have some of the data. But if you've got commercial properties that are owned at $5,000 an acre, and we'd raise yours to $9,700 an acre.
Yeah, theirs is actually
Then that could be-
3,000 an acre for the pellet mill, and mine's going up this year to $9,700 for my 1 acre of land. Like I say, theirs has not gone up since that pellet mill was owned by German Pellets, and the other things are not gone up.
Yeah, are you talking about the pellet mill? Whether they are under abatement, the pellet mill. Yes.
But the land would not be.
The land.
It's not under an abatement. But it's still, if your land goes up $14,000, why aren't they, why do they want to like mine, right?
Does any other court members have anything for Mr.
I'm
Wood?
gonna put these up here so anybody can get them a copy if they want to.
Okay.
This is our tax rate that we've set for the last 5 years. And I think anybody can see that it's gone down. It hadn't went up as far as the rate.
Thank you for hosting this.
Yes, sir. Has anyone you got any more questions? Anyone? Mr. Luther? All right, what we're gonna do now, we're gonna turn it over. Someone has a question for Mr. Luther. You'll be able to come up here and then you'll be able to talk to him about your taxes. So if you're able to do that tonight,
Motion to adjourn.
there's a motion to adjourn. Let's do it.
All those.
I don't think we need to vote.
Madam Clerk,